3 notes. That's all it took. A 4-year-old girl in a yellow jacket was humming in a fish market, and the most dangerous man in Seoul stopped breathing. Kwon Dohyun had buried his mother when he was 7. Every October 15th since, 31 straight years, he walked Noryangjin Fish Market at exactly 6:40 a.m. Same entrance, same route, same destination. Stall 47, where an old woman sold sesame candy wrapped in wax paper. He'd stand there for 90 seconds with his eyes closed. Nobody was allowed to speak to him. The vendors knew. The porters knew. Even the delivery drivers who only came on Tuesdays knew. You don't touch Kwon Dohyun. You don't speak to him. You don't look too long, especially not on October 15th. His bodyguard, Sung-woo, walked 6 paces back. His hand rested near his jacket. His eyes never stopped moving. Dohyun reached stall 47, closed his eyes, let the generators and the ice machines and the scrape of boots on wet concrete fill the space where silence would have been too loud. Then he heard it. 3 notes, 5, then a full melody climbing out of the market noise, winding between the clatter and the shouts and the crash of ice into metal bins. His hand went to his chest. Fingers spread wide over his sternum, pressing hard. Behind him, Sung-woo's hand slid inside his jacket, because the boss looked like he'd been hit with something nobody else could see. 20 paces away, a vendor whispered to a new worker, "Don't move. Don't speak." That's Kwon Dohyun, a child. Dark brown skin, yellow jacket 2 sizes too big, pink rubber shoes that didn't reach the floor. She was humming the way children hum when they're bored or cold, or filling silence with the only comfort they own. The melody coming out of her was the exact lullaby Kwon Eun-bi used to sing to her son on the walk between the East Gate and Stall 47. 31 years ago, in a Jeolla dialect that died with her. That song shouldn't exist outside his own skull. Dohyun's eyes opened. He lifted one finger. Didn't turn around. Stop. Sung-woo stopped. The vendor went rigid. 2 porters carrying mackerel changed direction without a word. Dohyun turned his head, slowly. The way a man turns when he's not sure the thing he heard was real. The woman behind the child wasn't startled, wasn't nervous. Her hand sat on the girl's shoulder, steady and protective. Her eyes were locked on Dohyun the way someone watches a door they've been told will open at a certain time. She was waiting for him. Dohyun walked toward them. Each step left a wet print on the concrete. Vendors pressed against their stalls. A fishmonger froze mid-cut, knife hovering over a red snapper. 2 women sorting sea cucumbers looked up, then away. He stopped 4 feet from her, crouched. His knees hit the wet concrete. A 60 billion won crime boss, kneeling on a fish market floor. The girl opened her eyes, dark brown, steady. She looked at him the way children look at strangers they haven't decided about yet. No fear, no warmth, just raw tension. Around her neck, a gold pendant, on a thin chain, small, oval. Something was engraved on its face, characters too small to read from here. But the flash of it ran through Do-hyun's body like voltage. The woman moved. 1 stride. She stepped between the child and Do-hyun, planted her feet, and looked down at him. "Don't touch her." English. Clear. Final. The crowd stiffened. Sung-woo twitched. A vendor took 2 steps back. Nobody tells Kwon Dohyun what to do. The air in that corner of the market went tight. The kind of tight where everybody's breathing gets shallow and nobody knows why. Dohyun didn't stand. Didn't signal Sung-woo. He looked up at this woman and said nothing for 4 full seconds. Then, "Who are you?" Sung-woo translated. Grace didn't look at the translator. Her eyes stayed on Do-hyun. "His mother sent me." Sung-woo's Korean landed in the silence. Do-hyun's hands, resting on his knees, closed into fists. Slow, not anger. The body trying to hold the body together. "My mother is dead." Korean, flat. The same sentence he'd carried for 31 years, spoken the same way every time, like stating the temperature. Grace answered. Sung-woo translated. Yes, now. Now. She was alive until recently. She didn't die in 1993. Everything he'd grieved. Everything he'd built his silence around. Every October 15th, every 90 seconds at stall 47, every year of his life, from 7 onward. Dohyun stood. Slowly. The way you stand when you're not sure the floor is still there. He looked at Grace. He looked at the child peering around Grace's leg. He looked at the pendant. Then, to Sung-woo, low enough that only Sung-woo heard, call Director Shin. Find everything about these two. Quietly, Dohyun added. Quietly from whom? Sung-woo asked. No answer. Sung-woo dialed faster. Grace reached into her coat. Sung-woo's hand snapped to his waist. Grace stopped, looked at the gun hand, looked at Dohyun. Then, slow, deliberately slow, she pulled out a sealed cream-colored envelope. She said to give this to her son. When he finds the girl, Korean characters on the front, slightly uneven, written by a hand that had once been sure. He knew that handwriting. Permission slips, grocery lists, the name labels sewn inside his school jacket. His fingers closed around the envelope, and something inside his chest cracked. Not visibly, not on his face. Deeper, in the place where he'd sealed his mother away for 31 years. He opened it. One photograph. An old woman, Korean, 60 maybe, holding a baby. The baby was dark-skinned, wrapped in bright cloth. The woman's face was thin. Her hair had gone silver. Her eyes. He knew those eyes. It was his mother, 31 years older than the woman they'd buried, alive, in a small house with a tin roof and a blue door. He turned the photo over. For my son, when he finds her, she is mine too. The photograph shook between his fingers, not his hands. His hands were locked. But the paper trembled like it had its own pulse. If she was alive all this time, who lied? And who held the funeral? Before we go any further, subscribe now, because what Dohyun finds out next isn't just a mystery. It's a 31-year theft. Director Shin had the basics within the hour. Grace Mensah, 32, Ghanaian. Arrived at Incheon 3 days ago on a tourist visa. Staying at the Itaewon International Guest House, room 14, paid cash for 2 weeks. Her instructions, Shin confirmed this twice, were precise. October 15th, Noryangjin Fish Market, stall 47, 6:40 a.m., not the approximate time, not the general area, the exact stall, the exact minute, which meant the woman who sent Grace had known for years, known the date, known where he stood, known how long he stayed. His mother had been watching. These questions burned as Dohyun stood outside the market watching Grace refuse his car. We walk, Grace said. Sung-woo waited for the order. The order to insist, to put them in the car whether they liked it or not. That was how things worked. When Kwon Dohyun offered, people took. Grace turned and started walking. A daze heavy on her hip. The envelope gone, the photograph handed over. Dohyun watched her walk. Then he followed. On foot, 3 paces behind. No explanation. Just his presence on the wet sidewalk as Seoul woke up around them. A man who controls 9 districts. Whose name makes loan sharks cross the street. Whose phone calls move shipping containers. Walking behind a woman from Accra who just told him, no. They reached the guest house elevator. The 3 of them stepped in. The doors closed. A daze started humming again. The melody filled that metal box like water fills a jar. From the bottom up, nowhere to go but everywhere. Every note, exact. Every interval, right. Dohyun's throat tightened. His eyes went dry. He hadn't blinked in what felt like a full minute. The melody was doing something to his nervous system that 31 years of silence hadn't prepared him for. Grace's room. Small, clean. 2 single beds. A suitcase open on the floor. She set a daze down. The girl pulled a stuffed giraffe from the suitcase and climbed onto the bed, humming inside her own small world. Grace stood between him and the child, arms crossed. "I need to understand," Dohyun said through Sung-woo. "Everything. Then sit and tell your man to stay outside." He made a decision that in his world bordered on stupid. He nodded. Sun-woo stepped into the hallway. The door stayed open 4 inches. Grace sat on the opposite bed, folded her hands. Began. Her name in Ghana was Ama Serwa. That's what everyone called her. She came to Kumasi in 1996. Thin, sick for a long time. Didn't speak Twi, didn't speak English. Only Korean and a little French. My grandmother found her sleeping outside the church in Adom. The plastic chair creaked once under Dohyun. She lived with our family for 28 years. She taught my mother the song. My mother taught Adaze. That's all Adaze knows. The melody, not the words. Just the sound. Grace paused. Then, she was sick a long time. The last 2 years, she couldn't walk. She wrote letters. Hundreds of letters. Sent them to Korea, to this city. To a name she said over and over, Kwon Dohyun. His grip on his wrist tightened until the tendons stood out like wire under skin. They came back. Every one, every single letter, returned. No delivery, no explanation. She sent them for 28 years. Every one came back. She died thinking he didn't want them. She died thinking her son read her letters and chose silence. The room was quiet. Traffic outside. The giraffe's ear twisting in small fingers. Then the door opened wider. Junso walked in. He was already there, already at the guest house, which meant he'd followed them from the market. Or, more likely, he'd been told before they arrived. Junso. 68 years old. Dohyun's senior advisor since 1997. The man who organized the funeral in 1993. The man who stood beside a 7-year-old boy at the burial held his hand and said, "I'll take care of you now." His silver hair was swept back. His navy suit hadn't changed size in 20 years. He leaned on a cane and surveyed the room with a gaze that missed nothing. "A folk tune, perhaps," Junso said. "Korean, light, aimed at Dohyun. Children's songs travel. You'd be surprised how melodies cross borders." Grace didn't understand the Korean, but she watched Junso. Watched the shift in Dohyun's body. Not submission, but awareness. A second weight in the room. Dohyun turned back to Grace. "The letters," he said through Sung-woo. "Where are they now? I don't know where the ones she sent are. She told me they never arrived. But there's a pastor at the Itaewon International Church, Reverend Osei. He has copies. He was waiting to be contacted. Waiting by whom?" Grace looked at Dohyun, held his eyes. "By you. Here's what happened next." Dohyun moved Grace and Adais to a safe apartment in Yongsan. Not detained. Not questioned further. Protected. Guarded. He called Director Shin and said 3 words. "Find everything. Quiet." But quiet didn't mean quiet from the police. Didn't mean quiet from someone specific. And the fact that he didn't say the name told Sung-woo everything he needed to know. "Now I'm going to show you something. We're jumping forward 9 days. October 24th, 2:07 a.m. Dohyun's study. Desk lamp on. And on the desk in front of him, 147 envelopes. Cream-colored. Ghana postal stamps, arranged in rows. His phone to his ear. "Bring Junso. Mappa warehouse. Tonight." What made him make that call? What's in those envelopes? We're going back. Grace had one demand before she'd cooperate. No men with guns near her. She said it from the apartment doorway. 2 of Dohyun's team behind him, both holstered and visible. Grace looked past Dohyun at the weapons, then back at Dohyun. She's 4 years old. She lost her grandmother 3 months ago. She doesn't sleep through the night. She won't grow up seeing guns in hallways. Sung-woo translated. Dohyun looked at Grace for a long time. Weapons off. Now. Both men hesitated. Sung-woo repeated it. Holsters came off, folded into jackets. Grace watched every motion. She didn't move from the doorframe until the hardware was gone. A boss disarms for a child. Keep that. Ades wandered past the kitchen into the living room, humming. The pendant swung against her chest as she walked. Dohyun watched it. The flash of gold, the glint of something carved into the metal. He couldn't read it from here, but every time it caught the light, the pull in his chest tightened another notch. Meanwhile, Director Shin was running traces. He found the Reverend that afternoon. Reverend Osei, Ghanaian, 60s, ran the Itaewon International Church for 11 years. When Shin showed up unannounced, the Reverend didn't look surprised. "I've been waiting," Osei said. Shin sat across from him, paper stacks, worn Bible, a window overlooking the alley. Waiting for who? For him. For whoever came asking about Amasawa. The Reverend folded his hands. "The woman you call Kwon Dohyun." Shin's pen stopped. Osei told him everything. A Korean woman arrived in Kumasi in 1996, half-starved, carrying nothing but a photograph of a boy standing next to fish tanks. She built a life, married a Ghanaian man, Kwame Mensah, who died in 2011, raised his daughter Abena, taught Abena the lullaby. Abena taught Ades, and she wrote letters, hundreds of them, to an address in Seoul, to a name she whispered like a prayer. Every single one came back, Osei said. Shin recorded everything, drove to Dohyun's compound, filed his report. And here's where the ground shifts. That evening, Junso reassigned 2 of Shin's investigators, moved them to a logistics audit in Busan, replaced them with his own men, Park and Kim. Without paperwork, by morning Shin's team had shrunk by a third, and the remaining investigators were feeding reports to Junso's office first. Dohyun didn't catch the reassignment. That was invisible. But the report? Junso's summary of Shin's findings landed on his desk within hours. Too fast. Too clean. He read it twice, set it down, picked it up. "This is thin," he said to no one. The report offered a name, Yoon Byung-ho. A folk musician from Mokpo, Junso's summary suggested the lullaby was a regional Jeolla melody. Yoon composed in the 1970s. Not private, not unique. A coincidence. Cultural exchange. Case explained. Convenient. The name sat on the page like a period. Someone wanted him to stop reading. He picked up his phone, called Shin directly, not through Junso's office. The name in the report, Yoon Byung-ho. "Who gave you that?" Silence on the line. Then Shin's voice, careful. "It came through Junso's office, sir. I didn't source it." He hung up. Junso inserted himself into the investigation of Dohyun's mother before Dohyun asked him to, before anyone asked. The man who organized the funeral. The man who said, "I'll take care of you." The man Dohyun called the one fixed point in his entire organization. That man put a name on a page and handed it to Shin like a locked door. Shin ran Yoon Byung-ho on his own. No request through Junso. His own channels. His own access. Here's what he found. Yoon Byung-ho was real. Folk musician from Mokpo. Died 2003. His catalog, 47 compositions. Documented. Registered. Archived. Not one of them matched the lullaby, but Yoon's name appeared on one other document. From 1993. A death certificate. Kwon Dohyun. Date of death. March 8, 1993. Cause, illness. Yoon Byung-ho. Same man, same lie. 2 documents, 3 decades apart. Yoon didn't write the song. Yoon signed the death. Shin brought this to Dohyun the next morning. No intermediary. No copy to Junso. Dohyun read it once, read it again, set it down. Then he ordered a full internal audit. Every financial transaction, communication, and personnel decision that had passed through Junso's office in 31 years. Specifically, Park, Kim, and Seo. 3 men who reported to Junso before they reported to anyone else. A parallel power structure, hidden inside his own organization, built over decades by the man he trusted most. And while all of this was unfolding, while Shin ran traces and Dohyun stared at walls and Junso moved people quietly through the system, Adez wandered through the Youngsan apartment humming. Every room, every corner, the kitchen, the hallway, the spot by the window where the afternoon sun hit the floor. She hummed the way children carry songs, without knowing what they hold, without understanding that the melody passing through her body was a message from a grandmother who gave her everything except the reason why she was singing it. Dohyun heard it through the phone when Sung-woo called with a security update. In the background, faint, distorted through the speaker, the lullaby. He didn't hang up. He listened for 12 seconds, then disconnected. For the first time in 31 years, he was letting the sound in. But tonight, he had to break something that couldn't be put back together. October 19th, 8 p.m., 14 senior men around a dark table, fluorescent lights, no windows, water glasses, ashtrays. The permanent smell of smoke worked into the carpet. The caretaker Grace had approved was stuck in traffic. Adez couldn't be left alone, and the meeting, Shin's findings on the Yoon Byung-ho connection, couldn't wait. Not one more hour, not with Seo in the building. So Dohyun carried her in. A 4-year-old black girl in yellow pajamas, giraffe in her fist, head on his shoulder. 14 men went silent. Not the usual silence. They always went quiet for Dohyun. This was different. This was the silence of men who'd known Kwon Dohyun for decades and had never seen him hold a child. A cigarette stopped mid-air, a chair scraped back. A water glass clinked against the table from a hand that moved without its owner's permission. Dohyun sat at the head, positioned Adeze on his left knee. She looked around the room, blinked twice, and buried her face in the giraffe. Nobody spoke. Then, Seo Jungwon, halfway down the right side, opened his mouth. Why is a Ghana child here? Korean. Loud enough for the table. The kind of question that dresses prejudice up as procedure. Every sound in that room died. Chairs stopped creaking. The smoker set down his cigarette without finishing. The elder at the far end started to cough and killed it. Every eye moved from Seo to Dohyun. Dohyun looked at Seo. His voice didn't rise. His expression didn't shift. 4 words. She is blood. Sit. Seo sank back, mouth open, shut. His hands dropped to his lap. The man beside him slid his chair away, half an inch, just enough. And then a daze started humming. She didn't know where she was. Didn't know what kind of room this was, or what kind of men sat around this table, or what the tension meant. She was tired. She was bored, and the only comfort she had was the melody her grandmother taught her mother, who taught it to her. So she hummed, and the lullaby filled the sealed room the way water fills a basement, rising, silent, unstoppable. It reached every corner, every man. The eldest man at the table, 76, white-haired, had been sitting with his eyes half closed since Dohyun entered. He opened them now. His left hand rose to his mouth. His right hand gripped the table edge until his knuckles went white. He whispered, not to anyone, to the air. That is Madame Kwon's song. 16 people in that room. Not one breathed. The man near the door closed his eyes entirely. Seo stared at Adez with an expression that had traveled from contempt through confusion and arrived somewhere near fear. If that was Madame Kwon's song, the private lullaby of a woman they all believed died in 1993, then how was a 4-year-old girl from Ghana humming it in a sealed conference room in Gangnam? Dohyun locked eyes with the elder, said one word, yes. The song was no longer a private grief. It was organizational knowledge. 14 men knew. And one of those 14, Seo Jungwon, reported directly to Junso. The clock had started. Within hours, Junso knew. Within hours, he gave his own order. Move the cabinet, he told Park over a secure line at 11:40 p.m. Mapo warehouse office, now. But he was too late. 9 p.m., October 21st. 3 hours before Junso's order to move it, Shin had a key from a warehouse manager who'd been quietly cooperative for 6 years. He turned the key, pulled the top drawer, 147 envelopes, cream-colored, Ghana stamps, Korean handwriting that started firm in 1996 and trembled by 2024. Every one sealed, every one unopened. Kwon Dohyun wrote to her son every 2 to 3 months. For 28 years, every letter was pulled from the system, carried to this cabinet, and locked inside a warehouse run by Junso's logistics arm. She wrote 147 times. Someone took everyone, Shin photographed everything, sealed the drawer, called Dohyun. Sir, I've found them. Found what? Letters. From your mother. All of them. Junso kept them. The box arrived at 11 p.m. Shin carried it himself. Dohyun sent him away at the door. He sat at his desk, closed the door, turned off his phone. For the next 7 hours, he read. The lamp threw its yellow cone. The city hummed. 16 million people moving through their nights, indifferent to the man on the 23rd floor who was reading his mother's voice for the first time in 31 years. If the person you trusted most was the one who stole your mother from you, would you want the truth, even if it took your whole life apart? Drop that in the comments. Because Dohyun's is about to get the kind of truth you don't come back from. Letter 1. April 12th, 1996. My son. I am alive. I don't know if you can read this yet. I don't know if they told you I am gone. I am in a place called Kumasi. The people here are kind. I am learning to eat their food. I think about the market every day. I think about stall 47 every day. I think about your hands, which were so small when I last held them. I will find a way back to you. Wait for me. Letter 12. October 1997. I have written 6 times now. They come back. I went to the Korean embassy. They couldn't help. I don't have documents anymore. The man took them when I left. I dream about you standing at the tanks, counting the fish. Letter 27, March 2001. Dohyun, are you there? Are you big now? I heard someone say your father's name is known in Seoul. Does that mean you are safe? I hope you are safe. I named a tree in the yard after you. It is the only thing I can give your name to. Letter 43, November 2004. I hope you are so big now that nothing can reach you. He folded that letter, slid it into his jacket pocket, kept reading. The letters changed after 2008. The handwriting got larger. Not style, but survival. The pen gripped harder to make up for hands that didn't obey anymore. And the salutation changed. Before 2008, my son. After 2008, Dohyun. He saw it immediately. The distance that crept in after 14 years of silence on his end. Something happened in 2008. Letter 71, August 2008. I tried to come to you. I saved for 4 years. I flew to Bangkok because it was cheaper. I was going to take a bus to the embassy and get emergency travel, but someone stopped me at the hotel. A Korean man. He said you knew I was alive. He said you did not want to see me. I did not believe him, but when I got home, the last 3 letters were returned again. So I stopped believing my own hope. Bangkok, 2008. She flew halfway around the world with 4 years of savings. Someone met her at a hotel and told her that her own son didn't want her. And she believed it, because the letters kept coming back. The investigation would later confirm, through records from the Montreux Hotel on Sukhumvit Road, room 412, registered under Surwa Mensa, that a man matching the description of one of Junso's logistics people was in the same hotel on the same days. The Bangkok trail went cold after that, but the shape of what happened was already clear. She died thinking her son chose silence. For 16 more years after Bangkok, she kept writing, shorter letters, weaker handwriting, less hope. Like watching a candle burn down through the paper. You could see the flame getting smaller with each page. Letter 147, the last one, July 2024. I am very tired now. I will stop asking. I will send the girl instead. Grace will take her. October 15th, stall 47, 6:40. If you are there, you will know her. If you are not, then I was wrong about everything. She built the reunion from her deathbed. Didn't know if it would work. Didn't know if he still came to the market. She only knew the ritual, the walk, the stall, the time, and she bet her last breath on the hope that the man he became still carried the boy she lost. His shoulders folded forward. His hands slid down the glass, leaving a streak on the cold surface. He stood there for 40 minutes, forehead on the window, soul below. His mother's last words on the desk behind him. Then he walked to the desk, picked up his phone. Sung-woo, bring Jonso, Mapo warehouse, tonight. Shin called an hour later. Sir, if you remove Jonso, the Incheon port agreements collapse in 2 weeks. Busan Logistics loses its anchor. 60% of your revenue runs through his contacts. No hesitation. Prepare the cost. The empire could crack. The money could scatter. The deals could fall. He'd spent 31 years building on a lie, and the lie had a name, and the name was going to sit across from him in a warehouse tonight. That night, Adaze woke up crying. Grace held her. She hummed herself back to calm, the lullaby. Always the lullaby. Through Sung-woo's open mind, Dohyun heard it from across the city, faint, crackling through the connection. His mother's song, sung by a child who didn't know what it carried, drifting through a phone speaker at 3 a.m. He listened until she stopped. He had something else to do first. 1:15 a.m., October 25th. Junso's cane tapped the loading dock concrete in measured intervals. Tap, pause, tap, pause. The rhythm of a man who'd walked into 1,000 rooms and walked out of every one still standing. Bare room, metal table, 2 chairs, 1 fluorescent bar that flickered every 8 seconds. The air smelled like concrete dust and standing water. Junso sat without being asked, folded his hands, crossed his legs. His face held the expression of a man who'd prepared for this the way he prepared for everything. Dohyun entered carrying the archive box, set it on the table between them. He didn't sit, no speech, no accusation, just the box, the silence. 2 men on opposite sides of a table with 31 years between them. Dohyun lifted the lid, let Junso see the rows of cream-colored envelopes. Said nothing. Junso looked at the envelopes. His face didn't change, but his hands did, fingers pressing against each other, harder. His right thumb sliding over his left. He reached for his tie, straightened it once, then stopped, mid-motion, as if realizing the gesture was a confession. She was alive, Dohyun said. Junso looked up. Yes, no denial, no redirect, no performance, just yes. Dohyun's voice was low, controlled. A wire pulled tight enough to hum. How long? Since 1993. You forged the death certificate. I arranged it. Yoon handled the documents. And the funeral. The body we buried. There was no body. The casket was weighted. The ceremony was real. The grief was real. For you, for your father, for the organization. That was the point, Junso said. Why? Junso exhaled. Something moved behind his eyes. Not guilt, not regret. The weight of an answer he'd carried for 31 years and still found too heavy to deliver clean. She would have destroyed everything. Dohyun didn't move. Your father was building. Noryangjin, the port access, the Incheon alliances, all fragile. She was talking to a reporter in Mokpo, a church group with ties to a corruption watchdog. She didn't understand what your father was. She thought she could change it. He paused. Let the room absorb it. I gave your father 2 options. Handle her or remove her. He chose neither. So I chose. You chose disappearance, not death. I sent her out of the country with enough money to start over. Gave her documents under a new name. Told her if she contacted you or your father, the other option would follow. Dohyun said one word. Quiet. like placing a single stone on the table. 147. Junso's hands shook. Not his face, not his voice. His hands. A tremor that started in his fingertips and spread into his wrists. Fine, involuntary, coming from somewhere below decision. 147. 28 years. A woman writing to her son, and a man standing between them, with a filing cabinet and a key. She wrote to you every 2 months, Junso said. Every letter came through the postal relay to our Mapo logistics office. I took each one, filed them. Why not burn them? Silence. 3 seconds. 4. Because they were hers. He stole them but couldn't destroy them. Took her life apart but kept her voice locked in a drawer 3 miles from Dohyun's office. Junso admitted the rest. Park, Kim, So, his men inside Dohyun's network. The parallel reports. Shin's investigators reassigned. The Yoon Byung-ho cover story planted. The Bangkok intercept in 2008. All of it, not one act of betrayal, but a system, built over decades, maintained with precision. I chose the organization, Junso said, and there it was. Not hatred, not cruelty, conviction. The unshakable certainty that the organization was the highest good, and anything threatening it, even a mother's love, was a risk to be managed. Dohyun sat down. You chose the organization over my mother. Yes, you chose the organization over me. Junso's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Get him out. Sung-woo entered. 2 men behind him. Junso stood, reached for his cane. The silver handle clicked against the table as he lifted it. Alive, Dohyun said without looking up. Stripped of access, referred legally. Every account, every contact, every asset, gone by sunrise. Junso walked out, back straight, cane tapping. 2 men flanking him. In the corridor, 3 overnight detail watched him pass. 2 looked away. 1 stared at the floor. The warehouse door closed. Dohyun sat alone with 147 letters and a fluorescent bar that wouldn't stop flickering. Park folded within 48 hours. Shin sat him down with evidence and 2 choices: cooperate or face the same legal referral as Junso. He signed the papers. Left with a single box. Kim resigned 12 hours later. Same paperwork, same silence, same box. CO ran. Made it as far as Daejeon. Shin's people found him at a rest stop, sitting in his car, engine off, staring at a dead phone. Within a week, Junso's parallel structure was gone. Loyalists removed. Reporting lines cut. Mapo warehouse sealed. But infrastructure doesn't vanish clean. The Incheon Port Agreement, 43 billion won a year, negotiated by Junso over 9 years, collapsed in 16 days. 3 partner families pulled out at once. Restructuring concerns. Bosan Logistics lost its primary contact. 2 shipping routes went dark. 60% of Dohyun's revenue ran through Junso's contacts. Removing Junso wasn't removing a man. It was pulling out a wall. The ceiling came down. A rival syndicate tested the gap 3 weeks later. A shipment rerouted without notice. A meeting requested through channels nobody had used in years. The kind of polite aggression that says, "We know you're bleeding." Dohyun held the line, met the meeting, showed his face, made promises he'd need to find new ways to keep. Grace came to see him at the compound on a Thursday evening. She'd read between the lines of the business page reports about restructuring. "You didn't kill him," she said. Dohyun looked at her. "Killing makes us the same." Grace studied him. Whatever she was looking for behind those steady eyes, she found something. She nodded once, sat down. "She talked about you every day," Grace said. The last year, when she was too sick to write, she'd sit by the window and say your name. Just your name. Over and over. Like if she said it enough times, it would reach you. The Bangkok investigation continued through Shin. Hotel records confirmed the overlap. A man matching a Junso associate at the Montreux Hotel during the same 2 days Eunbi was there. But the trail went cold. 16 years of erasure. No witness, some questions don't close. They just become rooms you learn to walk past. That evening, at the Yongsan apartment, Adaise reached for Dohyun's hand. He was sitting on the couch while Grace made tea. The girl climbed up beside him, and her small fingers found his wrist. The left one, where a tattoo he'd gotten at 19 was inked into the skin. 3 characters, Unbi-do, Unbi's childhood nickname, Adaise, traced the characters with her fingertip. She didn't know what they meant. Couldn't read Korean. She was just touching a mark on a man's arm the way children touch things that interest them. No agenda, no understanding. Just the devastating curiosity of someone who doesn't know what they're holding. Dohyun watched. Didn't pull away, didn't explain. He sat there and let a 4-year-old girl touch the name of a woman who loved them both, from opposite sides of the world. The next morning, he returned to the market. Not alone. A man in a work jacket carrying a crate of ginger stopped in the main corridor, muttered under his breath. Foreign child, with him? Sung-woo stepped forward, hand rising. Dohyun stopped him. One finger. Then he reached down and took Adaise's hand. Open. In the middle of Noryangjin Fish Market, where every vendor and porter and delivery driver could see. The most feared man in the district, holding a small black girl's hand, walking towards stall 47. The man with the ginger crate looked away. The woman at the fish stall loosened her grip on her child. 2 vendors at the dried squid section bowed their heads, not to Dohyun specifically, but in the direction of something they could feel. That afternoon, Grace told him how Unbi died. She was in bed, Grace said. July 7th, around 4 in the morning. I was there. My mother was there. The pastor's wife was there. She was holding a photograph. His voice was barely there. Which photograph? You, about 7 years old. At the market, standing next to the fish tanks. She'd carried it for 28 years. The corners were soft from touching. She died holding the photograph of a boy she last saw at 7. A boy who grew into a man she never met. Dohyun opened his eyes, looked at the sleeping child, the pendant against her chest. Catching the amber light? Did she say anything? At the end? Grace nodded. She said, he comes every year. He'll come. That night, Adaise couldn't sleep. 1 a.m., giraffe in her lap. Eyes wide, tear tracks still damp on her cheeks. Grace had tried for an hour, rocking, singing in twi, running her hand across the girl's braids. Nothing worked. The grief was older than the child's language for it. It sat in her small body like a stone she couldn't name and couldn't set down. Then she started humming. The lullaby drifted through the half-open door. Dohyun stood in the hallway, barefoot, shirt from the day, one hand flat on the wall. He'd been standing there for 20 minutes. He'd heard Grace try. He'd heard the crying. He'd heard the humming begin. The melody moved through the dark apartment the way it had moved through the fish market 12 days ago. Without asking, without effort, filling every space it touched, something unlocked in his chest. Something that 31 years of silence and power and grief had welded shut. He walked into the room. Grace looked up, saw his face. She stood and moved aside. Not because he asked, not because he ordered, because whatever she saw told her this wasn't hers to hold. Dohyun sat on the edge of the bed. Adaise looked up at him, still humming, her face wet and open, and trusting in the way only a child's face can be. Without calculation, without protection, just raw. And Dohyun began to sing, not the melody, the words, Korean. Jeolla dialect, words he didn't know he still had. Buried so deep in the sediment of childhood that they'd survived everything. They came up broken. His voice cracked on the second line. He kept going. It split on the fourth. He kept going. Tears ran down his face into the creases around his mouth. And he didn't wipe them because both hands were holding the edge of the bed, and he needed them there. Adaise's mouth fell open. She stared at him with the unguarded attention of a child witnessing something she could feel but couldn't explain. The words completed the melody that had been passed from Unbi to Abena to Adaise, hummed and hummed across continents and years. now had its language back, given by the only person alive who remembered the words. Sung-woo watched through the crack in the door, made it 8 seconds, stepped back, put his back against the wall, looked at the ceiling, pressed his lips together until his jaw stopped shaking. Some things are too private for witnesses, even loyal ones. He sang the second verse twice. The words were about a river and a fish and a boy who counted stars. A lullaby, simple and small, holding nothing that should explain why it could cross oceans and outlast decades and bring a man to his knees on a fish market floor. Addie's eyes closed. Her body swayed. She leaned into him the way children lean into warmth. No thought, no decision, just the pull of the closest safe thing. Her head came to rest against his chest. The pendant pressed between them. His voice dropped until it was barely sound. Just the shape of words his mother breathed into him before the world took her. He sang until she slept. Then he sang one more verse. For the room, for the hallway, for the woman in Kumasi who died holding a photograph and the hope that her son would come. Grace stood in the doorway. She'd come back. She watched the two of them in the lamplight and nodded once, not to anyone, to whatever brought this here. Hours later, the lamp was off, the apartment still. Somewhere in Seoul, the Incheon port deal was dissolving. Somewhere, Junso's legal case was being built. Somewhere, a Bangkok file sat in an unlocked drawer, unanswered. Dohyun slept in the chair beside her bed, head tilted, breathing slow for the first time in 12 days. His left arm on the mattress, sleeve pushed back. On his wrist, Unbi-do. On the pillow beside his hand, resting where the pendant had fallen from the sleeping girl's neck. Unbi-do. Same 3 characters. His mother's name, inked on his skin 19 years ago. Carved in gold in Kumasi, by a woman who wanted her granddaughter to carry the name across the ocean. Separated for 31 years, now inches apart in the dark. The song survived, but his mother was still gone. The letters arrived too late. The Bangkok trail stayed cold. Yoonbi died in a small house in Kumasi, believing her son chose silence, and no amount of singing in a dark room would change that. The grief didn't go away. It found a place to live. In a jacket pocket, letter 43. I hope you are so big now that nothing can reach you. In a desk drawer, letter 147. If you are there, you will know her. He was there. He knew her. 30, 1 year too late.